as a PG podcast, but then Devin just kept on dropping shits and fucks, and
I'm just trying to figure out what's in her mouth.
I just want to see him interview Francesco Accoli.
No, he's a good human being, is what he would say about himself, I'm sure.
Who's hosting this thing?
Take charge, Kevin, would you? Jeez.
First time we ever met those guys. That was the major drunken pub argument.
I think you guys are the worst.
I'm going to have to probably watch some Canucks hockey, unfortunately.
Just making friends left, right, and center, and probably some enemies as well.
Tell him to shut up. He needs to hear that every once in a while.
Off to a good start.
All right. We are live.
It's okay to talk when it goes live.
Well, hello, everyone, and let me just get my headset on. That's well preparing podcasting. I was sort of just getting everything together, and I realized I didn't have my headset on. What the heck? Who's paying a boatload? Anyway, we're welcome to the Hockey Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at podcast_hockey. We are live on Facebook, facebook.com, the Hockey Podcast, youtube.com, the Hockey Podcast, where we are currently at the Ryan Reeves of subscribers there, as well as you can get the audio of the podcast and share it with all your friends after the episode. The most underrated podcast in hockey. Hello, Tyler. How are you? Who's on mute?
We're just off to a roaring start.
We're off to a rip-roaring start.
Nice to see you, Kevin. Nice to see you as well, Sean. I'm doing all right now that my mic is on.
Yes, Sean, is your mic on?
My mic is on. My mic is hot. I'm ready for some good hockey discussion today.
Yes, and Devin is with us. Devin is just he's off to a technical difficulty start. So we're all like, we're on the hot mic. We're the exact opposite of Tim Peel, where he had the mic on, we had the mic off. So,
everything was so good before we hit the live button.
Yes. So our best content is before we go live.
Yes.
But we're going to get started here. It's we were expecting a quiet week for the Canucks, and then we were expecting sort of the Flames. Well, we were expecting the Flames, but it got a little bit steamier than usual last night. We're going to get this set up here as last night or before the game. It was Johnny Gaudreau's 500th National Hockey League game, and his head coach had this to say about that.
Mostly as a guy who's coached against him and now working with him. What have your kind of impressions been of the career he's made so far, and then what are you looking to see out of him now at this point?
Well, if you're just basing on his 500th game tonight, hopefully he has more energy than in his 499th game.
Yeah, so there we go with that. That is Darryl Sutter on Johnny Gaudreau before the game. Darryl Sutter after the game said that this was Johnny Gaudreau's best game. He had a 2-point night. He had Darryl Sutter said that this was his best game that he has played since he's been here. So we had our poll question. If Sean pulls that up, the question was Darryl Sutter too harsh on Johnny Gaudreau? We'll start with Tyler, then we'll go Sean, and then we'll go Devin, who has appeared. Good morning to Devin. Hello, how are you?
Good morning. Having some connection issues over here, but we seem to be doing okay right now. So hopefully it holds up until the end.
I was saying to everyone before you got on, unlike Tim Peel, our mics are off. So
yeah, I went to start talking and I was mic'd off. So yeah.
Anyway,
it's a great start then.
Yes,
we're off to an awesome start. Tyler, we'll start with you.
Yeah, in regards to Darryl Sutter on Johnny Gaudreau, I mean, I get he's trying to employ a motivational tactic, but I didn't like that. You just got a new head coach in. The team's out of a playoff spot. They've been through a rough patch. If I'm a Flames fan, or even somebody on the team. I want to see the coach in the fight with us. I want to feel like he's got our backs and that he's trying to keep a positive frame of mind around the struggles. And then, to see that, kind of bothered me. But to Johnny's credit, he responded with a really good game, and the Flames picked up a win last night. And and then Darryl softened his comments afterwards. But I wasn't a fan of that. No.
I thought it was great. I think it was harsh but fair, but I thought it was great because Gaudreau has not, for the most part, under Darryl Sutter since he took over, has not been good enough. And it was time for Gaudreau to step up. If the Flames are going to do anything, they have to have Monahan and Gaudreau rolling. So Darryl was trying to motivate Johnny Gaudreau, and there is nothing wrong with what he said.
Yeah, I would have to say that Darryl's an old school coach. He's done this for years, decades actually, and that's just one of the old school tactics is going to the media and saying something, and hopefully that the player responds properly. And really think that Johnny, he hasn't been really on par with where his game should be at this point as his career. And you're going to have ups and downs. You're going to have off years. Just ask Anze Kopitar. A few years back, he had a shit year, and then he came back and had a career high in goals and points. So players they'll have their ebbs and flows, but I really don't mind Darryl saying that. And I don't think that that's the only time that Johnny's heard it was through the media. I'm pretty sure Darryl and him have had conversations about it before, so it shouldn't be that big of a shock value to Johnny hearing that. And Darryl's not wrong. He really needed to be better than he was the game before, and in my mind, what he's done this entire year. So overall, I can see where people are coming from with it could be too harsh. And maybe you need to have your players back, but Darryl's a truthful dude, and he'll tell you how it is and what it is, and I respect that for sure.
So he scored this week. He scored his first 5-on-5 goal with Darryl Sutter, and Darryl Sutter's been there 10 games. He scored his first 5-on-5 goal actually this week since February 11th, so more than a month. That game, the Friday game, was Darryl Sutter said the players were dopey in the first. There were players that were dopey in the first period. Was it harsh? Was it something that you want to hear when you're at a milestone? No. You would rather hear congratulations. But was it? I think I voted harsh but fair because this team this team lost 3 or 4 in a row before going into that game. I think that we should expect Darryl Sutter to coddle this and sing Kumbaya. No one in this organization is singing Kumbaya right now. It's not a happy time. They're going into the game. They were 4 points out of the playoffs, 3 games in hand. The Canadians now have 3 games in hand, with the Flames now being 2 back. This team needs a kick in the ass. Like, it really does. So it's to me, that's why you brought in Darryl Sutter. And I know that there are people out there that loathe what Darryl Sutter does and all of this. I'll say this. I know that there are people out there with the bestest of intentions and want the absolute best for you, but will have the social skills of a peanut. And it's Darryl Sutter's just a direct person. I don't think he was wrong. It was at the right time to say it. Probably conventionally, no, but I think understandable.
Yeah, there's nothing for Darryl. He's always been blunt, and that's just the way he is. And just that doesn't mean it's a bad comment or anything. And Gaudreau responding and playing his best game in, under Darryl Sutter it shows that Johnny didn't take it personally. He took it as a legit criticism and stepped up.
Yeah, and that's the type of characteristic you really want to see out of your player, not being mopey and sad for himself, but to rise to the occasion and prove Darryl not proving Darryl wrong, just getting making sure that he knows that I can play this way.
Yeah, and I mean, he made a bigger statement last night, and he also sat the men that we talked about in the Mark Stone trade, Devin. He sat Juuso Välimäki and Dylan Dubé last night for Brett Ritchie and the returning Michael Stone, who you kept saying Michael. That Mike is there.
M. Stone. M.
Stone played last night. Just to me, I go back to that comment. I think Darryl Sutter's tired of the shit that he's seen from this team, and that's where this is coming from.
He definitely is. Sending those messages to those young players speaks volumes, and letting those players know now that they need to come and play every single game and try their best every single game. That you said it best, Kev. That's what this team needs. And if Darryl thinks that he needs to send a message to those young players, then they're going to get it, and they better receive it properly and respond to it accordingly as well.
And nothing else on that, I guess. And also last night, I guess the other thing that I just quickly want to bring up with the Flames here, Rittich played well last night. Mr. Markstrom's not been great. I'm not saying he's been terrible, but Mr. Markstrom has not been Mr. Markstrom. I don't think he's 100%. Right now, I think there's a possibility he's probably hurt. I'll start maybe with Devin here. Would you like to see Rittich go on a little bit of a run of games here?
It really depends whether or not Markstrom is actually injured. We'd rather have him at 100%, not 90, not 85, but actually at 100% for him to be as effective as he needs to be for the Flames. So realistically, we're not really gonna. I don't think we're gonna make the playoffs. So if Rittich's playing well enough so that Markstrom can get healthy, and then absolutely, and kind of send a bit of a message to Markstrom, being like, hey, we love it when you push through injuries, but this is not the time and place to do that as of right now. And I would not be offended or be against Rittich playing, consecutive games here going forward.
Sean, Tyler, any opinions on that?
I would wonder a little bit if Markstrom was rushed back or if he rushed himself back. Markstrom loves to play. He likes to try and fight through some injuries. We've seen that in his time with the Canucks. Doesn't want to get pulled out of games. Remember the Darryl Sutter quote from not long ago, "I don't pull the goalie." But it is it's a very compressed schedule, and Markstrom's maybe showing signs of fatigue. But look, clearly, I think Markstrom's the better option than Rittich. As long as Markstrom can give you Markstrom level of play, I don't even know if it needs to be at 100%, but at least 90 to 95% level of play. He's the guy. But Rittich, he's not a pylon. He's a capable goalie. They shouldn't be totally afraid to play.
Markstrom's your guy. I would say Markstrom's your guy. You ride him. I think you spell him off more than you have in the past. You give Rittich some more starts, but Markstrom's your guy. You play him.
Rittich's numbers are better lately than Markstrom's.
Yeah, but Markstrom's your guy. There's a reason you went out and spent $6 million a year for 6 years to bring him in.
Mm-hmm.
That goes a bit against what you were saying before, though, Sean. We outplayed him, and now you're saying play him even though he's injured.
No, you still play Rittich a little bit more than you did at the beginning of the season, but Markstrom's still your guy. You're still going to live and die by how well Markstrom's playing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the idea that you're going to suddenly give the net to David Rittich is crazy to me. I mean, Markstrom is the guy for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that Markstrom's not the guy, but I would play Rittich Monday. I would give him a back-to-back and give Markstrom a little extra rest. Is what I'm saying. Well,
also you have the trade deadline coming up too, and you could be showcasing him a little bit as well, because there has been a little bit of talk of trading Rittich potentially to a contender. and getting a little bit more goalie depth. So that could be an option going forward too.
For sure. For sure. Anything else on the Flames? Okay, seeing none, that was a good solid 10 minutes on the Flames, folks. I have a funny feeling this will go a little longer because we always talk Canucks a little longer than the Flames. But Elliot Friedman, the Vancouver, one of the Vancouver Canuck Twitter trolls, Elliot Friedman, he finds a way to get into the Canucks fans' skin, and just ride it up. It's beautiful. But
that's because people let him.
I know, but yeah. But last night he said that Travis Hamonic will not waive his no movement clause. He reported last night that Carolina was interested. It caused a buzz on Twitter. Of course, some Canuck fans are angry that Jim Benning gave Travis Hamonic a no movement clause, and others are missing the point. And I have some thoughts on this as well. We have a poll question on this as well going into next year. We'll get into that. But Sean, we'll start with you, then Tyler, then Devin. What are your thoughts on this? Are you okay with the fact that Travis Hamonic got a no movement clause? What are your thoughts?
Travis Hamonic was not signing anywhere during this situation with the pandemic and everything without a no movement clause. For those who don't know, his daughter has, I don't know the exact issue, but his daughter has an illness that makes her immune compromised. So him playing and going out and doing everything is an issue for him. And he needs to be close to her, close to his family, and close to his extended family so that they can all take care of her if needed. So if he was going to go anywhere, he was going to make sure that he had that no movement clause or no trade clause put in there so that he knows that he is there for the whole season. He doesn't have to uproot his family or uproot himself and get himself away from his ailing daughter in the middle of a season. So those are facts. That's why he was willing to sign with the Canucks, is because they were willing to give him that so that he could play with them for the whole season. And when you look at that, I like it. I like him as a fit on the Canucks blue line. I want them to keep him for at least another season. Again, cap issues will play into it, but if they can find a contract for 1 to 2 seasons with him that makes sense going forwards, I think that helps them long term a lot more than, say, letting him go in the off season. Because even if the Canucks are only 2 years away from being a contender, like Jim Benning has said, then they still need to fill out the blue line with effective players who can help their younger defensemen and younger forwards develop into the players that they need to be for them to be contenders in 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, the cap hit for this season for Hamonic is $1.25 million. You know, if he didn't get the no trade clause or no movement clause, whatever the case, you know, would they have had to pay more? Probably, you know. So that's part of the negotiation. Yeah, you don't like the idea of handcuffing yourself on being able to make changes mid-season, but you may be able to get a player in more affordably. I mean, Mike Gillis was celebrated for this because he was able to get some pretty good contracts when he was the general manager, but that came with a lot of no trade clauses as well. Where no trade clauses really create problems for you is when you're handing them out in longer term deals and then you see a drop off with the player and then you're stuck with that player. Maybe not stuck entirely, but certainly, you know, you've handed over control over the trade process to the player with the no trade clause. I don't have any issue with it. I don't think people should be overly shocked by the fact that Hamonic has that protection, given everything that Sean talked about. And it's one of these examples of where normal human being life realities intersect with your pro sports fandom, and you know, maybe a few people are having some trouble with that.
2018-19 season, Hamonic, he missed 2 games with the Flames because his 8-month daughter at the time, was in the hospital with a serious illness, and very, very scary moments. And that was before COVID even hit. So it doesn't surprise me at all. People, like Tyler said, people need to understand that, real life has more meaning than hockey does. And it's unfortunate that if you're a fan that, he's not going to waive his clause, but you were not going to be able to sign him unless he had a no trade clause within his contract. So it's completely understandable.
And you also have to remember he missed the bubble last year because of COVID. He decided to not play. He opted out. Yeah. So he is putting his family first, and that is a correct thing to do. And from a general manager's perspective, I also think it is the right thing to do to give him a no movement clause. I think that we in fandom, and I might point a little bit more to the Canuck fan base than anyone else, and maybe this will get me in a little bit of trouble. But the term asset management and trades, and we just think it should be just easy to move around these chessboard pieces like they're nothing. There's families involved in this, and there's some serious personal issues that are, quite frankly, none of our business as to why things happen. There are things to criticize Jim Benning for sure. We've discussed that on this podcast. This is not one of them at all. I think that was the right thing to do from a human being perspective, knowing Travis Hamonic's situation. Do you, in that situation, do you want to have to get up and move again, even if it was to 3 other places, even if it was potentially Edmonton, Calgary, or Winnipeg? Do you really want to move? No. And if you have to move to the States, you probably will have to quarantine, and you may quarantine even longer than normal for that. I think Travis Hamonic wanted some stability. I don't think that was, even though he came in on a PTO, but there was nothing wrong with that in my mind.
And it's a 1-year deal. It's not a long-term deal that's hampering how the Canucks can go forwards and build this team for years to come. This isn't like the Brandon Sutter deals, the Antoine Roussel deals, the Jay Beagle deals where they gave trade protection to them on long-term contracts. This is a 1-year deal that you saw someone who could come in and add some stability to that back end. And when he got healthy, that's what he's done. And you can move on from there. I want to see them keep him for another year or two, because you look at the Canucks depth, especially on that right side, there's not much coming up, or at least not that is, you feel comfortable playing in the NHL. Yeah, you've got Rafferty, but his defensive game, it leaves a lot to be desired. That's the reason he hasn't made that next step. Jet Wu's in his first pro season and is locked in COVID purgatory in Utica right now, because they're still trying to figure out what's going on down there and haven't played in over a week now, and they've only played like 9 games this season. So there's a gap there, and you bring him in as a stopgap who plays well with Quinn Hughes, can play well with other players, and as a right shot, it works. You fill a need, and you allows you to not rush, say, a Jet Wu into the NHL when he's not maybe not ready.
Yeah, just going back to Kevin's points there. I mean, I really dislike the phrase asset management. I mean, it's great when you're making trades on the video game, but this is the real world. These are real people with real issues and real flaws too. I mean, these are not, they're highly paid and we have high expectations for them, but they're not without flaws either. So, the idea of asset management, I get the term. I just don't like it when we're talking about real people here, and Travis Hamonic's a good example of that.
Can I just say something that I'm just going to say this? If you're using asset management and you're angry at how Darryl Sutter talked to Johnny Gaudreau, I feel that that's a bit hypocritical.
Just
That
a little
really
bit.
Yeah, it really is, and I've seen it. So,
The other, like, as Tyler said, they are human. Like, think of Anton Forsberg. That guy's
oh my
been
God.
waived and claimed and had to travel and only just got into an NHL game and actually played a hockey game for the first time this season and this past week. I felt so happy for him because of all he's gone through, and he finally gets in and gets to play. Like that's the stuff that's frustrating, especially right now when you've got this the way that things are set up. There's there isn't much social aspect to being on a hockey team like there usually is, and that just for humans who are for the most part very social creatures, that's tough.
Yeah, I mean, I remember Rick Bowness, the Stars coach, with some great comments during the bubble hockey last summer about how, it's not as great as people think it is, and I thought that was really refreshing. Really seeing that human side of it come out. Great for Tampa. They came away with something to show for it. But man, it's a long stay in a bubble for Dallas, and then leaving empty-handed.
To bring back that Rick Bowness point too. Dale Hawerchuk passed away during that bubble, and Rick Bowness was really close to him. And I would imagine having to grieve in a situation where he's not he's with his team, but there are people in that Winnipeg Jet community that Rick Bowness was a part of that he never got a chance to really personally connect with. That would have been hard. And I think that, again, this is an example of how we forget that these players are human beings.
Yeah.
Have the passion, make your comments heard, but once again, there is a point where you got to just let all hockey go, and real life does step in. So there's been a bunch of those within the past year and a half, and we really do respect them as human beings. Now, to the poll question, I actually think at the very least, and Sean and I will probably debate on this, I think that if I'm the Canucks, I want to see what other options are there on that right side before I swing back to Hamonic. Even if you sign Hamonic, the Canucks have to do something about that defense anyway. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. I think you need to decide if Nate Schmidt is on your left side or on your right side. I also think, of course, you've got the Alex Edler situation, which is another thing we will probably get into another time. Jordy Ben, I don't know what you do there. But I'd look around and see what's out there before I'm not rushing to sign Travis Hamonic, but I'm not upset if he's back, if that makes sense.
Well, I'd like to add one more name there, Kevin. They need to find a way to get Olli Juolevi playing again.
Yeah, that's the other thing, and that's the question is which side. I think he's more apt on the left, but that's another guy you gotta put in.
But if you make one of the other guys switch sides for all that to fit, that's fine for me. I mean, he's a 5th overall draft pick. And he's not playing right now, and there's no farm team for him to be playing for because he's on this side of the border. So, yeah, I mean. Looking ahead to next season, they got to find a way to make Juolevi an everyday guy.
Well, that's part of why you have to look at what the Edler Schmidt issue there. I think Schmidt should be your long-term left side solution to replace Edler, and you go that way. And because Edler is making $6 million this year, he's a UFA at the end of the year. We don't know what his plans are. I know. From everything, the information that's publicly out there, you can gather that he wants to retire a Canuck. He wants to stay in Vancouver, but they can't lowball him to a point where he's just going to pull a Chris Tanev or Jacob Markstrom and walk away. But long term, you have to look at who's your solution, and I think Nate Schmidt is that solution. I think he is a long term solution on that left side for the Canucks, and if you go forward with Hughes and Schmidt on the left side, and then you bring in, say, a Vansenberg type veteran to push the likes of Juolevi, and don't forget about Jack Rathbone for next season, then I think that's the best way to go for your left side, unless Edler is coming back for a very discounted price. because the right side, again, it's the right side with Hamonic. That was why it makes sense to me to bring him back, because on the right side, if you're moving Schmidt over to the left, and I think they should, that right side is Tyler Myers and who, right? So they still have two spots to fill if they move Schmidt to the left, and that's still, so you can get Hamonic at probably a decent bargain of a deal going into next year, and then you go far, and then you bring in someone younger to grow with them. You've got, like I said, Jet Wu's. They've got high hopes for Jet Wu, but he's only in his first pro season, and he's played, and he's been being thrown into this COVID debacle down there. So expecting him to take that next step when he wasn't necessarily. There was arguments whether or not he would how well he would do in his first pro season. There was a lot of people who expected him to have a sort of a Cole Lind type first season where it wasn't great, wasn't bad, and then take the next step in his second pro season. So you have to let them develop, and you still need to have a good veteran presence who can pairs well with Quinn Hughes.
Yeah, I get it. I just you're not, none of what you said is wrong, and I don't disagree with that. It's just I would like to see what is out there for options for next year. I mean, you still got. I mean, last year when the Canucks were looking for the right side, there was talk of Mackenzie Weegar, there was talk of Savard. I mean, there might be some trade options there too that could fill that as well. So. But I think we agree that the defense and the Canucks need some work. I think that's where we absolutely do agree 100%.
The key decision, sorry, Tyler, but the key decision is that what's happening with Edler and Schmidt, though, because that is the first domino that falls, that everything else follows.
Mm-hmm. I think, shoring up the defense. It's not good, or it's not great. It's not horrendous. Like I said earlier, if they can, if Levy keeps developing and can hold down a spot as a regular, maybe you solve some of it internally. I mean, I think most people feel like if you're going to start making a bunch of moves in the offseason, you got to look at that bottom six forward group and see what you can do there. So they, that to me, I mean, if you want to make bigger moves, that's kind of where they should be doing it. But anything they can do to improve the defense would be great.
Yeah, for sure. And the bottom six as well certainly will need its work. Anything else on the Canucks that we need to speak about?
Just hope that they can find a way to make the rest of the season entertaining.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, well, and I guess for them, they got to, hope that whatever, is it 6 games in hand Montreal has?
I guess.
I mean, if there's people out there that haven't totally given up hope of the playoff spot, well, that's not going to be an easy 6 games in hand for Montreal, seeing now that they're going to have to compress their schedule even more to make up those 4 games that they had postponed. So there's no guarantees there for the Habs.
Yeah, I mean, as disastrous, just to get back to the Flames here for a quick second, is that disastrous? And I'm not saying the Flames are making the playoffs, but they're only 2 out. Yes, this games in hand thing is an interesting thing, and of course, with the Canadians postponements, we're gonna have some schedule changes in the North, and according to Mark Bergevin, there's going to be there may be some 4 games in 5 nights for some teams here, so that's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, every team's going to have some schedule changes coming up here because they're going to try and rejig these missed Habs games in there somehow. So there are going to be changes to all 7 Canadian team schedules going forwards here.
Yes, and looks like the end of the regular season is going to be pushed a bit further into May now as a result of that as well.
That will be interesting, and I think that will. Yeah, and my understanding is the talk is the North playoffs may start a little bit later than everything else.
Potentially, I think they've done that before, where at least in subsequent rounds, not the initial round, because they usually like to start the playoffs with a bang. But in second round and beyond, they have started series before the other rounds have ended.
We're only talking like a day of overlap typically, but I definitely, I know we're kind of on a bit of a tangent here, but I see the playoff schedule going a lot like the bubble last year, where there's not going to be long gaps between any series. They're just going to keep rolling right through. Typically, there's a bit of a break between the end of the conference finals and the Stanley Cup final, and time to build up some media hype. But I don't see that happening this year either. I think they're going to maybe a couple of days and they're right back into it.
Yeah. Devin, did you have anything to add?
I mean, as of right now, if they're going to be rejigging the schedule around, if you're in fantasy hockey, that's going to kind of fuck up your schedule a little bit too.
Well, it's happened
36 minutes. You got past the half hour mark, Devin.
I think that's probably one of the longest ones. Not the longest.
It was 53 minutes the week before.
Yeah, it was. I'm once again, my apologies, Tyler's father, Mr. Noble.
We talked about it, how Nick Nurse got fined last week for swearing. I was like, wow. I mean, this is Devin territory.
We had a nice segue here, Kevin.
Yes, this is a great segue. It was the hot mic heard around the hockey world. Tim Peel, basically during the Nashville-Detroit game, if we have the clip.
Yep.
Let's hear it.
I think this was on Tuesday, right?
Yes. Yes, this was from Tuesday. We were on air during this happened, so we talked a little bit about this, but here we go.
Nashville early in it wasn't much, but I wanted to get a fucking penalty against Nashville early in the
There we go. And Tim Peel is no longer reffing games in the National Hockey League. I'm not going to say that he was fired because the statement didn't say he was fired, so I can't use that word. So I'm not going to use it for now. We'll start here with Tyler, our resident referee. We'll get his perspective, and then we have two players and former hockey players in this that will probably have a very good perspective on this as well. So this will be a very interesting conversation. Maybe Where's Chris's mead popcorn?
Oh dear. Well, so I mean, I will use the word fired for all intents and purposes. He was fired. I mean, he's not going to get to finish out the season. He's not going to have his farewell final game send off that we typically see for retiring referees, et cetera, et cetera. This is a double whammy. It's not just that Tim Peel was caught on a hot mic suggesting that there may be some issues with integrity in his officiating, but also dropping a fairly hefty F-bomb on a television broadcast wasn't seen very favorably either. I'm sure by the league. So a few things, and of course, lots of people have talked about this already. I mean, makeup calls, they shouldn't happen in hockey, but they do. It's always been like that. And I think what was really telling was hearing from a lot of current and former players come out and weigh in on this, and they all seem, the general theme there seemed to be people feeling bad for Tim Peel, that he was kind of, caught with the mic. And the NHL's reaction is about what you'd expect. Just throw a guy under the bus and, nothing more to see here. Let's move along, everybody. And that, if you're one of these idealistic types that think that the league's going to look at this and now, address their issues with officiating, I mean, that's silly. That's not going to happen. It's going to continue being the way that it is. And that is trending the wrong way. Last night on Hockey Night in Canada, I was really glad when Jennifer Gaudreau pointed out that the pipeline of officials coming up through the ranks is not a big one. It's getting smaller and smaller. I don't think fans should expect it to get better anytime soon, because you've got, the level of play going this way, and you've got the depth of officiating going the other way. So I don't know where it goes from here. More use of video. I don't like that idea. I didn't mind Rob Brindamore's idea of kind of having the eye in the sky type of, helper. I don't know how exactly that would work, but it's something that the CFL had been doing where they have the all 22 camera and somebody kind of monitoring things there and correcting like where the ball gets spotted and so on. So there's some help for the referees in that league. Maybe something can be employed in the NHL. Now, on the topic of game management, for me and for amateur referees, we're taught that game management is about, managing the conflict and the emotion in the game. If you've got a lopsided score and you've got a few minutes left, you could look at that like, okay, now you're refereeing to the situation. But let's say my team has a 6-goal lead and I go in and spray the goalie on a stoppage. I mean, even if it's light, if the referee calls the penalty there, that's game management, right? Like that is ensuring that the game doesn't get out of control. It's not trying to influence the outcome. It's not trying to balance the penalty minute total. It's not, tearing 6 pages out of the rule book each time 2 minutes flies by, right? Like the NHL's version of game management, we don't know what it is. We can speculate, but it sure feels like they want the referees to do situational officiating. They want it. They want a certain amount of power plays. They seem to want a certain balance between the teams. They want different levels of enforcement depending on the time and the score. You see in the playoffs, the rule book suddenly gets a lot smaller, and then when you get into overtime, you damn near have to kill somebody to get a penalty or take a non-discretionary call like shooting the puck over the glass. So that frustrates. I think all the players want is just within a game, an infraction in the first 2 minutes to be the same as an infraction in the final 2 minutes. And, the NHL could fix that, but they don't seemingly want to. They want to have situational officiating. And there's no, you never get to hear from the refs in the media. You got Colin Campbell, who, is long past his best before date. I think he's a big problem in all of this, but the buck stops with Gary Bettman. If Colin Campbell were to resign and say, I don't want to do this anymore, they'll just install somebody else with the old school ideas and somebody that supports, situational officiating. So I unfortunately for Tim Peel, he's made out to be an easy fall guy, and he's somebody that's not well liked amongst the fans. And it does make you wonder, if this happened to Wes McCauley, would he be afforded more slack?
Sean?
Yeah, Tyler, what Tyler said there makes a lot of sense. I don't like the cries and calls for call it by the rule book. I think it's the way hockey is. It's too fast. It's too random. You're not going to get everything. And if you do, it's going to be power play after 4-on-4 after power play all game. You're not going to have 5-on-5 hockey at all. I think you just need to find a standard and stick to it, whether it is the first period of the game or the third period of the game or overtime, or it's the beginning of this regular season or the playoffs. I want a standard. I want them to stick to it. I do not like the situational game management style of officiating that the NHL is allowing the refs to do or promoting the refs to do, because I think it brings up way too much controversy and way too much. I don't know what the hell a penalty is. Mm-hmm. It's just they're going to make mistakes. I get that, and when you make a mistake, you want to make up for it. But when you say blatantly to either your partner, your officiating partner, or the team, or one of the that you wanted to get a penalty against that team, that just does not look good. And no matter how innocent the actual intent was, and I don't think that Tim Peel was like, oh, I have to get Nashville a penalty here because of I don't like Nashville or I don't like this person, whatever. It was literally just he probably messed up a call earlier in the game and wanted to quote unquote make it up. He said the unsaid thing.
Yeah,
and
the way it appeared is that he had called a marginal penalty against Detroit in the first period. The Predators scored on the power play, and so now he's looking at it like he has to fix that. And trust me, in BC hockey and the clinics I've been involved in instructing, we emphasize that two wrongs do not make a right when it comes to to officiating. People have asked me too, looking forward to doing, say, a Terrace River Kings game, what are you expecting for the game? What are your thoughts? I was like, well, I'm just going to try and get all the calls right, so, but if you make one wrong, it doesn't mean then you start, sort of engineering it to get back on track. Just worry about getting the next one right. And, Tim Peel revealed to everybody that that's not how it works in their league.
And you're right. Two wrongs don't make a right, and that's the problem with the situational officiating that the NHL is allowing or promoting within their league. Is that is the approach? Two wrongs make a right. Yeah, I messed up a call here. I'm going to do a make-up call here. If you watch a game, how many times do you actually say, "Oh, well, that was a make-up call"?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost a nightly thing, right?
But again, what I don't like about the conversation and narrative that has happened out of this is that people are okay with that.
Yeah, see, I would be more of a supporter of just letting the referees apply the rule book, but that is, does that mean we're going to get games called like in the World Juniors when they're held in Europe? Because that's not an entertaining product to watch, right? I mean, even this year, and again, I don't know if it's a directive that the NHL wants more power plays because it's kind of lifeless to watch on TV without fans. But there is a lot of taps that are called for slashing and some stuff that it's so head scratching that it benefits your team, and you're looking at the replay going, really, guys, are you sure about that one? So I don't know. I don't think you need to have, strict 100% enforcement of the rule book, but whatever level of enforcement, needs to stay the same from start to finish. I'll give you an example. Thursday night, the Ottawa Toronto game, blatant trip right in front of the referee. Wayne Simmons losing it. I mean, don't read lips, kids. You can hear what he was saying to the refs from across the ice. And then somebody's over there at the referee crease talking about it, and here's the referee covering his microphone. I mean, what are we hiding here, guys? It just didn't feel like calling it, basically, is the only conclusion you can make, because it was 2-2 and it was almost, the end of the third period. And it's exasperating.
When you hear the statements and saying that the refs don't want to make a call that affects the game, those non-calls affect the game too. Yeah. Yeah. If it's a penalty, call the penalty. If you see someone get tripped, call the trip.
I have this frustration when I play rec hockey too. There's nights where it feels like the guys are there and they want to make the easy calls, but the job is to make all of the calls or non-calls. It's your job is to regulate the game. You're the one with the whistle, right? So this idea that you're just going to stand back and hope that everybody plays by the rules is just craziness. That doesn't even work in beer leagues.
You said it. You said the word right there, Tyler. It's entertainment. This is entertainment, and high-scoring games are entertaining. If you're a player, you're depending on which way it's going. If it's going for your team, you're not going to say a damn thing. And if it's going against you, then you want more fairness. Having the consistency is what you're looking for within a referee, and maintaining level heads and making sure the game doesn't get out of hand. But entertainment is the number one thing that the NHL is looking for, and situational. It's a balance between the two of them. At the beginning of the game, you're kind of, if I was a ref, I'd be feeling out the game, seeing what's happening, and if it's going to be a hit fest. And if both teams are willing and able to do it, let them play, let them go. But if it is a penalty, call the penalty. It's very unfortunate that Tim Peel went out the way that he did. And who knows if he's like, it's kind of funny the way I went out, because I heard that he was going to be retiring at the end of the year anyways. So I think it was just kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, well, happy retirement. But you really just kind of, if you're him and you've been in the league as long as you have, you just got to take it with a grain of salt, laugh about it, and kind of move on with your life a little bit. It's very unfortunate you don't get the recognition because those old school referees and linesmen always get the little tribute on their last game from the players and from the broadcast crew too. So it's unfortunate that it went out that way, but overall, you just kind of you want consistency. You want to make sure that the game is entertaining, but you kind of it's a balance between the two, really.
Just in regards to Tim Peel's resume, did not work a Stanley Cup final. So let's be clear. I mean, he's not in the top tier of NHL officials, but had a very long career. Did work the Sochi Olympics. I think an All-Star game. And so he had a fairly distinguished career as an NHL official. I suspect this is not the first time he's annoyed the league with things that he's done. There was the somewhat famous night out at the bar with Greg Wyshynski that was documented. I don't think the league cared for that very much. Although in that interview, we found that Tim was a very self-deprecating guy. So I think everything you said there, Devin, I think that's quite likely that he would take that kind of view on it. Now where do we go from here? Some people have suggested that the NHL had to do something because they want to get into gambling and they had to snuff out this perception issue. Well, boy, I don't know if you want to have situational officiating to keep the entertainment value up. That doesn't really work with, the idea of a totally squeaky clean, fair, air quotes, fair game. Well, it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here for sure.
So I guess just before I give my thoughts here, what line is Tim Peel on there? Is he on the first line, second line, third line, a fourth line of officials?
This is the Kevin Bieksa analogy that he used last night. I would say at least third line. I mean, you still got a lot of inexperienced guys that are being forced into action, and especially this year too because of the border, and you don't have the officials crossing the border. You've had there's injuries. Now they've punted one guy early here, so now you got some more games to fill. And Ron McLean kind of hinted at this in regards to Dan O'Halloran. He didn't really explain it very well, but Dan O'Halloran was one of the referees in that a couple playoffs ago where they had the phantom major penalty call against Vegas in Game 7 with San Jose. And the Sharks ended up coming back and winning that Game 7, and then Dan O'Halloran was cut for the rest of the playoffs. And then it kind of, the officiating kind of was shaky through the second and third rounds because you lost a couple of experienced guys there, right? Because of one bad call. In fact, it was such a moment that they then gave the referees the ability to review major penalty calls. So you do have to, on that point, you do have to be careful that you don't knee-jerk react to one mistake and lose experienced officials, because the guys coming through the pipeline, I mean, they're great guys, I'm sure, and are trying their best, but there's no substitute for experience. Yeah.
I think what everybody wants is consistency. And I think that this is the biggest problem. And this isn't a new thing in 2021. This has been happening for as long as I've watched hockey anyway. It's been something that we've been fighting and battling with. A penalty in the first is not the same as the penalty in the third, and that happens in the playoffs. And I think that's the part that's deeply frustrating to watch. And I think that as fans, we let our emotions get involved in this conversation. And I'm not saying that that's right or wrong. Even last night, I mean, there was talk about the Oilers-Leafs game that there was a missed call on Zach Kassian for interference during that game. There was a lot of Oiler fans upset about that. I think if this is the problem, like if you want this game management thing, I'm going to take you back to 1992. Game 6, the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Los Angeles Kings. Wayne Gretzky high sticks Doug Gilmour. Doug Gilmour is bleeding. That was an automatic 5 in a game. That was not called. What did Wayne Gretzky do? He scored the goal in overtime, went to Game 7. The Kings went on to win the Stanley Cup, or to get to the Stanley Cup Finals. Sorry, The Canadiens won.
Yeah.
If that's what and Kerry Fraser has admitted time and again, he should have called. He should have called the referee. He should have called high sticking there. That it's the consistency to me. That there's two things that it has to be consistent, and it's just simply And I think this is where the NHL is behind at least the NBA and the NFL. I'm not going to say they're behind the MLB on this for sure, but the NFL, for all of their faults, a pass interference penalty is a pass interference penalty no matter what quarter it is. And a foul is a foul no matter what quarter it is in the NBA. And that's where I think this is the biggest problem, is it's not consistent. And the fans are asking.
And we've seen many examples of this. Remember the foot in the crease era?
Yep.
Suddenly that wasn't an infraction, apparently, when Brett Hull put the potential clinching goal in against Buffalo, right? That's one example. The Kerry Fraser thing you bring up, I mean, that's I think is another good example of situational officiating. The situation said that we can't have a call here, so he didn't call it. And then the way the game unfolded and the series unfolded afterwards, now he feels the regret of not calling the penalty. Well, why is it like this in the first place? Just call the penalty. Have some stones.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem is and I think what Ray Ferraro said was best when he said that the league doesn't back up the officials.
No, and so it's easy for them to take the easy route out then, right? In that case. Yeah.
The league doesn't back the officials, but the other thing is we need to have the officials be able to come out and explain what happened sometimes. Not all the time. There's a lot of time where it's just a blatant mistake, whatever, they missed it, deal with it. But there's some times where I think if they come out and explain their thought process, it would quell so much of the upset fans go after the game, because you have the refs communicating to us why they made that call.
And I think quite a number of them would be happy to do that too.
And you can do it where it's a controlled one. You don't have to send them into the wolves and the media. You have them put out a statement. You have them go to the mic and say, we're making this statement about this call, and then you go and then they walk off. Like, you don't. I don't think you should let the wolves at them, let the media at them, but I think they should be at least out there to explain themselves at times.
Devin, accountability, right? That's what you're kind of looking for the refs. But my question to you guys is, okay, so you want the consistency there, but when is the best hockey, and why is it the best hockey? It's the playoffs. Right, and you want to make sure that yes, it's that they're two separate things: regular season and playoffs. And even the first 10 games of the season is different than the rest of the regular season, because the refs are trying to get the standard up and make sure that every team and every player knows what standard is there. But if you want that consistency, then you're going to lose out on what makes playoffs good is the fact that it is more high intensity, that it does have more contact, and that I just don't want to see that intensity lost within the game.
No, but when I'm saying, Sean, or Devin, that's fine as long as that is fairly uniform, start to finish in a game and game to game, and especially within a playoff series, game to game. Everybody would be in agreement with that as long as it wasn't varying all over the place, and that's what we see in the playoffs now.
Yeah, that's my problem.
That's I don't want them calling it by the rule book and calling it super strict because of that too. I just want them to have a standard and stick to it. Don't change it because it's 3-1 versus 2-2, or it's a middle game in the middle of November versus the beginning of the playoffs. You pick a standard and stick to it. Don't just That's why we're upset about and Tyler came up with the phrase that makes sense, the most sense for this: the situational officiating.
Yeah. I mean, look, if we're all in agreement here, we want 80% level of enforcement of the rule book all the time, because that will give us good flow and entertaining hockey. Fine, right? But as we've talked about here, it seems like in the first week of the season, we're at 95% level of enforcement. And then by the time we get to the end of the regular season, it's somewhere in the 60 to 70% range. And then when you get to the playoffs, it's below 50. You get to overtime, it's at like 5% level of enforcement. And that just drives everybody nuts, especially the players.
Yeah, I mean, and and again, this is the other part of this conversation that is difficult. And I'm not picking on Oiler fans here, but the star player part of this conversation comes into effect, because Oiler fans want every time that Connor McDavid is touched, they want that to be a penalty. And I understand that. He's Connor McDavid. And if I was an Oilers fan, I would probably be saying the same thing. But if you're watching a Florida-Carolina game, you're probably not going to want everything. That's not going to be the same thing, right? So even within teams, there's sort of an inconsistency that that I think people are expecting. And I don't think that that's right. I think consistency down the board in terms of what is, and whatever that is, let's agree on that and try to move forward. And I know that every referee has a different look on that, and that's also fine as well. But let's establish that we need a consistency. And before I get to the question from Keegan, I can I talk about Ron McLean for a second here? I'm sorry, that was unbelievably embarrassing last night. That was one of the worst Ron McLean performances I have ever seen. He comes on there and says, we don't have much time. So he takes the first 45 to 50 seconds to lecture us on privilege, while the guy has been sitting around for 20 years with a guy, and making us is a name, and sitting there listening to a guy for 20 years about privilege. He has no place to talk to us about privilege. And then the lecture about after that, just sit down. I don't care that you've been a referee for 23 years. I would like to hear from Jennifer Gaudreau, Kevin BX, and Kelly Rudy, and just stay out of the way. That was an embarrassment last night. Absolutely embarrassing. I'm sorry. That was horrendous.
Did you expect anything different than that?
I'm going to start a hashtag lecture by Ron McLean.
Yeah.
Like this is just like, oh my gosh, we need to have the wisdom of, for the Lord thy God quote that I've heard this week when I read it during my Zen on Wednesdays. Let's have that for 45 seconds. You, Kevin, now? We're not.
I know.
Stop.
I mean, Kevin had the photo on the mantle, and I think worked Ron McLean in as a second line level of official. So, I mean, Kevin was kind of not helping the situation with Ron's ego either, but your point's well taken, Kevin. A lot of the Twitter reaction, not that that's the only people out there that are reacting to it, but, a lot of people just kind of shrugged it off as, well, Ron doesn't have any credibility anyways because he threw Don Cherry under the bus a couple of years ago. So
that was just Ron being Ron. It reminded me so much of how awkwardly he tried to defend Stefan Oge in that Burrows incident. So I think I was someone who tuned him right out because Kevin's talking about that. I'm like, all I remember him saying is poor Tim Peel, and then I tuned out. Like it's unfortunate, and that's my biggest issue with Ron is when he gets all preachy like that and doesn't let the other people on the panel talk. Because we watch for Kevin BX, we watch for Jennifer Gaudreau, we watch for Kelly Rudy, we watch for Elliot Friedman. We don't watch for Ron McLean anymore.
Mm-hmm. I disagree. I think that he's been a staple on Hockey Night in Canada forever. And he just needs to find his lane. He's still in the old school mentality of where he's coming from. And yes, we watch for all those other analysts as well. But Ron McLean, he's still a big figure in Canada in hockey. So I don't know. I don't know if I really 100% agree with you guys on that. He's preachy, but I mean, who'd you rather have up there? Stropolopoulos,
James Duthie. Of course, he's not available to Rogers, but
David Amber, Carolyn Cameron.
Yeah,
here's the thing, Devin. You just wouldn't see that from those other people that were just mentioned.
I think David Amber has the ability to step back and let the experts expertly give their opinion. And I'm not saying that Ron doesn't have a valid opinion for 23 years of officiating. And I wish if he went into his officiating instead of the long-winded lecture that we got, I might have been okay with it.
Like I said, I think he needs to find his lane. He needs to adapt properly to what hockey is now and what the viewers are looking for. But at the same time, I don't know, maybe he should have. Unfortunate that George Stropolopoulos didn't work out, and that he had to come back into where he was. Because if he retired, like he said he was going to, then he might have a different opinion of Ron overall. But once again, I feel like we need to give him a little bit more respect because of where he has come from and what he has done for hockey. And yeah, don't get me wrong. Yeah, David Amber, I like him. I think he's great. And I wasn't a big fan of Jeff Merrick, but he's grown on me a lot. So that, like, there's going to be a bunch of different opinions out there for sure. And it's your opinion and you have the right to it. So this is mine.
I just want to be clear. I'm not trying to cancel Ron McLean. Because like Devin said, I mean, it's a long, distinguished career. He's an icon. But at the same time, I mean, when you have that platform and that profile, you're going to face high profile critique as well, just like George did when he was sitting in that seat. So, and by the way, I don't know if this is taboo to promote another podcast, but when George Strombolopoulos was on with Bob McCown and John Shannon, that was well worth listening to.
I was about to say it's a well worth listen to listen to that. Yeah. Question from Keegan Moonshine. Do you guys know if it's got to the point where teams will take notice of which refs they are getting on a given night?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, and I think even in minor hockey, because I've seen the body language as soon as I walk into the rink and you see the coaches sitting in the lobby there. I think definitely when they know who the referees are, it does get them thinking about how the game will be officiated. I even talk about that again with the rec league team. I mean, we know who the referees are. We can then discuss in the room before the game that it might be a more tightly refereed game than certain other guys, or or to watch yourself out there because it could be a little loosely enforced. So no, 100%. I think that's definitely something that they're paying attention to.
My question to Tyler is how many? Oh fuck! It's Tyler. Oh no, it's Noble. Or how many?
Probably lots. Yeah. And and why is that? Well, you'd have to ask other people, but I lean towards more of a literal application of the rules, and I think that does probably irritate after a while with people. But that's how Hockey Canada wants it enforced. I think fans have a different view of how it should be based on watching professional hockey, but we are still amateur hockey, even if it's dressed up in a more glamorous fashion than just amateur hockey. It goes back to the old adage, people have to get up and go to work the next day, so we have an obligation to call it tight and keep it safe.
Are there referees out there there are certain players that they're like, oh no, not this player? Like, for example, I'll just throw the name out, Matthew Tkachuk. Are there referees that you would say, oh no, I have to referee a game with Matthew Tkachuk in it?
Well, if it's not a game with Matthew Tkachuk, it's a game with some other guy. I mean, so yeah, maybe I do think there's definitely an awareness for the referees when you're doing a game with certain players that are crafty and play on the edge. Definitely. I think there's a heightened awareness for sure.
I know for a fact there were a bunch of referees whenever they said that, or they saw that they had whatever team I was on. I was an asshole. I was a complete dick to all the refs, and I know if I knew what I knew now back then, I would want them to be on my side. But I was always just like, "Fuck you," every single time. So yeah, like I know that was definitely a thing near the end of my career.
Yeah, and the other thing my final thing on this is from a hockey TV perspective to blend the two together. Really, we've said this before, I'll say it again. I really do think that there needs to be a ref analyst either on the panel or part of the on-call. I think that would help a lot just to make a simple education of the rules. I mean, people get frustrated when Cassie Campbell says that's a penalty when it's not. People get frustrated as part of the play-by-play analyst when a commentator does it. I think the NFL added it. I think it's great. I think the NBA is adding it, and I think the NHL needs to. I think that would enhance the game experience for everybody.
So what you're saying is that you want them to peel back the curtain and have Tim Peel be on the broadcast.
Okay,
See,
I just want everybody to know that that Sean and Kevin spent about half an hour workshopping this last night. Okay,
I am not part of any workshop on this. I was actually going to call Sean out on this because he keeps calling me out for corny titles, and he just corny titled this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least I know that they're corny, and that's what I'm going for.
I know mine are corny.
One of the challenges with a referee-focused analysis in a hockey broadcast is how short the stoppages of play are. That does make it challenging. The NFL with the 40-second play clock, and then if they do throw the flag, they have more time. There is more time to work that into the broadcast. How that would look in hockey is a bit more of a challenge.
Well, last night, I'll give an example from last night again, from the Oilers-Leafs game, is the Pierre Engvall goal. Whether or not the Oilers were going to challenge that situation, that's where that would have been interesting to see a referee perspective. I mean, clearly he didn't touch it with his glove, very clear, but it would be interesting to get a ref perspective of what Tippett is thinking about, or like, can you check? Because that's always confused me when they go to review and then the team can challenge the review, and it's just, yeah.
It's a little clunky. It takes a little while. I mean, to get the process, there needs to be a ruling on the ice before the video review part can take place. But you get everybody together. It's like, well, what is our call on the ice? So that part kind of looks a little sketchy. And then they announce that. Then you get the challenge versus no challenge. Then you need to go through all the replays. I mean, that like I say, clunky's the phrase. Although they ended up at the right decision.
Yeah. What I think they should do is they should have one retired official that works, or one or two that work the night for the NHL, and then what their job is to either talk on camera on Sportsnet or NBC and all this, but you have it so that you end up they come on and explain it while the review's going on, as opposed to having Kelly Rudy or Cassie Campbell or John Garrett try and figure it out, right? They don't know the whole process. Or at least inform someone of the process so that they can walk us through it.
Yeah, I mean, you go look back at the Carolina Calgary game from last year, where everyone thought that goal was offside, except Brian Burke, and Cassie had to apologize when the second period came out, because everyone was like, "That's offside. Is that not offside?" And that's where that is needed here. And I'm just going to keep this up. I think that this is an advantage that our if we could just pat ourselves on the back here, this is an advantage we have as a podcast, is we have Tyler, the referee, giving us a perspective. And I don't think you get it anywhere else. So kudos to us. I say
it's nice to hear from Terry, because Terry and I have had our conflicts over the years in the CI Central Interior Hockey League. But here there's a point I wanted to make earlier. People like literal application of the rules when it works for their team, right? Then they suddenly don't want the literal application of the rule book anymore. So that's always the challenge that you face in officiating sports, particularly fluid sports like hockey and soccer is another one too, where there's a lot of debate over, how things should be done there. Yeah, like I say, again, I'm concerned as to where it's going next, because if it means more use of video, I don't know if that's a good thing. There's always side effects to expanding video review. But I don't see a scenario where the NHL is just going to sort of put it more in the referees' hands to kind of manage it themselves. The NHL definitely wants control over the process, and as the collective experience level of the referees comes down, boy, I mean, every year in the playoffs, there's always just bizarre shit that goes on. And I would imagine we're going to continue to see that.
Yeah.
So that's an hour and 14 minutes there, Mr. Noble, without swearing.
I didn't use the F word like you did.
I was listening to the Road Show last night, and She used the F word a few times. I was like, Lindsay Roach? I've never heard her use the F word, but she did there. So there. I mean, even one of the better podcasters in our game uses the F word. So there.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that is. Well, let's answer this question and then we'll move on here.
Okay.
What about going into a game with an agenda?
Well, I mean, I don't go into games with any agenda, but the NHL. I mean, the Stéphane Auger incident, back in 2010 would suggest that does happen. So, and then they didn't fire OJ right away. Eventually, I don't know how long he's been retired now, but eventually he, was no longer in the NHL. But they kept him off Canuck games for quite a long time, and is that a bit of an admission from the NHL that they had a ref going rogue and they had a problem there? My only agenda is to get out of the thing alive. Honestly, a lot of things just fair and safe's the way, and that's it. I mean, it doesn't matter to me what the results are. It doesn't change, what I'm paid or how it doesn't affect me in any way what the result would be, right? So what agenda would there be? Now in the NHL, I don't know. It it kind of you can speculate. This is a bit of tinfoiling perhaps, but maybe the referees know that what the good for the business outcomes are, and if certain teams are getting further in the playoffs, does that make them look good as referees? I don't know, but you could throw that out there, and I don't think that would be the craziest thing to suggest.
Fair. We'll leave it there. I'm sure that we'll keep on to this one for there'll be other opportunities to have this discussion, especially when the playoffs start. This will be fascinating as well to go on. So we can dig into this a lot longer for sure. But before we, I did want to touch on Alex Ovechkin. He passed Philip Esposito. And we had a poll question this week where if Alexander Ovechkin was the best goal scorer in the National Hockey League, 70% said yes. Some people were like, this is ridiculous that you're asking this question. It's obvious. I don't know if it's obvious, but fair, foul, is Ovi the best goal scorer in the NHL history? We'll start with. Can we start with Devin on this one?
Yes, I think he is. A lot of different comparisons there, and time, decades and generations of hockey going through. But I think he is. He's dynamic. Him on that power play with that one timer, absolutely ridiculous. The way that he scored a couple, or a bunch of his goals has just been unreal. One sliding on his back, and I know that's not really, answering your question, but overall, yes, I think that he is the best.
Tyler?
I'm leaning towards yes as well. It's unfortunate that this season's short and last season got cut a little bit short as well because, had Ovechkin continued to show the durability that we've seen over his career, there was, it wasn't out of the realm of possibility that he could catch up to Gretzky's career goals total. And that was at, one time thought as completely untouchable. So for a guy like Alex Ovechkin to even sort of breach the suggestion of maybe catching up to Gretzky, and then the style and I mean, if he can get that one tee off, you don't even see the puck on the broadcast. It's just in the net. The goalie's just hoping, it hits him. I would lean towards Ovechkin, although certainly there's some recency bias there, and there's some other names in the past. Mike Bossy, Brett Hull. You can go down the list of some other real pure goal scorers and have a good conversation there. But I would put my vote behind Ovi at this point too.
For me, he's in the conversation. I don't think there is a definitive answer to this question the way some people think. I think Mike Bossy's in that conversation for sure. He has the best goals per game rate of anyone in the history of NHL who has played significant amount of games. Like he scored 573 goals in only 752 games. And yeah, he did that in the early 80s. And when you compare eras, the early 80s were a little more high scoring, but you can't discount that, in my opinion. And I think if Mike Bossy was doing that right now, we'd be screaming. Like even I think it's a very good discussion to have. I think Ovi's right up there. I think he deserves to be considered that, and people who have Ovechkin as the number one goal scorer of all time, I can't say definitively that you're wrong. But for me, I think Mike Bossy is someone who gets lost in this discussion. Everyone, when they talk about this, it's Ovechkin versus Gretzky. Then they bring up like Brett Hull. No, like not many people talk about Mike Bossy, and that's because he retired in 86, 87. So it's just too far back. And then everyone looks at the 80s era as the high scoring era. So I understand that, but I think he needs to be in this conversation. And there's like, I would say 3 or 4 players that are in that conversation, and Mario Lemieux's in there too.
Lemieux, Jaromir Jagr is in that conversation. Wayne Gretzky, I would say, is still in that conversation. I would, for pure talent, stats aside, the 3 most talented goal scorers, pure goal scorers, were probably Ovi, Lemieux, Jagr. Like just the way that how they could score goals. I mean, yeah, Ovi could just scored most of his goals going one way, but he was able to shift it around and do some other things as well. And then Gretzky, I think I would argue Gretzky's underrated as a goal scorer. A lot of people put him put that in the 80s and remember his passing, but man, that guy could shoot a puck. He could shoot a puck. Like it wasn't always hard. It was smart. It picked corners. I'm inclined to say not yet. And I think that Tyler, I agree that we don't have I think it's unfortunate we don't have the sample size. But I would put OV in the top 4 or 5. But I'm thinking about it. I probably would still put Gretzky at the top in terms of like the guy knew, like it's hard. Gretzky's the greatest player ever played this game. Sorry, Gord. But I just, if Ovi passes Gretzky, I think then are open to the convert. Then I would probably say yes, but I think it's got to be. I still got to put it to Gretzky.
You're lucky you live in BC, man. I'm from Calgary. If you were closer, I'd drive to your house right now, and distantly safe, obviously distance, 2 meters away, and yell at you.
I don't. The other player that needs to be put in there is Pavel Bure as well. Like, yeah, he didn't have the sample like this. Again, their sample size only 702 games, but he was scoring at a .623 goals per game rate, which is higher than Ovechkin, higher than Gretzky, higher than Brett Hull. But like I said, Mike Bossy, 0.762 goals per game. The next closest is Mario Lemieux at 0.754. Those two don't get enough credit when we have this discussion. For me, it's Ovechkin, Lemieux, and Bossy in terms of pure goal scorers, and that be able to rely on to get the puck in there. And I think that you put those 3 and talk about that. There's no wrong answer among those 3, in my opinion.
My thing is I almost think, whoa, dropped you. Hello.
What are you doing?
It just slammed my computer stuff. Technical day. My point is, my thing is this. I think we've almost underappreciated Wayne Gretzky in terms of what he was. I mean, yes, it was the 80s, but I mean, what McDavid was doing, Gretzky. I'm not saying McDavid and Gretzky are the same in any way, shape, or form, but Like, you just look back and watch Wayne Gretzky in his prime. It was unbelievable. It was literally like Connor McDavid and the rest of the world. That was that. Like,
for me, I always see Gretzky as a passer. He's a playmaker. That's for me. That was always what he did best.
And he scored 92 goals.
Oh yeah, I know. I get that, Kev. But you look at he was a much better. He was a way better playmaker than he was a goal scorer.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, let's put it this way: if you were playing fantasy hockey back in the day, you would have to draft Wayne Gretzky's assists and Wayne Gretzky's goals. You couldn't draft Wayne Gretzky as one person.
Yep.
That's just, yeah. I don't think we see that with Connor yet, but anyway, some in my league want to trade if think it's okay to trade Connor McDavid. Anyway, whole other topic.
Yeah.
The final topic we'll get into here is it's been a tumultuous time in Vancouver radio. Of course, we had the end of TSN 1040. Now we sort of have the rise of TSN 1040 with Donnie and Dollywall back on check. Sakaris and Bryce doing their podcast. And now they're on the Sports 650 airwaves anyway. Halford and Bruff will be Monday, taking over from Sobalski and Solkowski. And Karen Sermon will be joining Scott Rintoul in the 9 to noon slot, 9 to 1 here in Vancouver. And as well as moving two new shows, Bick and Craig McEwen, Bick and the Boss 1 to 3, 3 to 6 is Ran Deep. Dan Riccio and Sat Shaw, meaning Andrew Walker, unfortunately, was also one of the casualties. This is a brutal industry, Tyler. We know this. Some ways not surprising, but a tough yet interesting day.
Yeah, we kind of looked at around the time of 1040 being shut down, what the trickle down effect would be, and whether 650 would look to bring in any of the displaced 1040 talent. I get tip my cap to Sean. I mean, he was pushing the idea of moving Halford and Bruff over to the morning show at 650, and that is what's happened. I mean, it is a ratings oriented business. Already, I mean, the sports stations, even 1040, they didn't put much of a dent into radio listening when you match them up against CBC or CKNW and some of the other news talk stations and music stations in Vancouver. But I nothing against James Sobalski or Perry Solkowski. I think they're great broadcasters, but it was just a morning show that just seemed a little flat. And Halford and Bruff are not flat. They had a pretty successful morning show going at 1040, abruptly ended by Bell Media's decision to change formats. So good for them. As for Andrew Walker, I was a big Andrew Walker fan. I know a lot of Canucks supporters are not. I think there's a great value in having somebody in a fairly prominent position in a radio station come in with a different perspective, not having been sort of brought up through the market and kind of living in isolation a little bit. I mean, Andrew Walker comes from Saskatchewan. He worked in Calgary, worked in Toronto. So I thought his perspective on the Vancouver sports scene was really good. I think he's a really smart guy, but we have seen that Rogers tends to listen to its audience, especially on Twitter, and Andrew Walker was not popular. So in that regard, I'm not surprised that he's out. But for his sake, I hope he lands on his feet somewhere. I think it'd be great if he went back to Toronto and joined Sportsnet 590, particularly because he's strong on baseball, and the Blue Jays, are on 590. And they do a lot of baseball stuff on that station, and I think that would be a good fit there. But we shall see on that. The new afternoon show at 650, and help me out here with the names, but I believe it's Sat, and it's
Sat, Dan Riccio, and Randy Chanda.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be a pretty strong show there. And Dan Riccio is another one that came from elsewhere, and I think has been a welcome addition on 650, with a bit of a different perspective.
Well, Sean.
Oh, I'm I'm so happy that Halford and Bruff are back on the radio and in the morning show slot. I felt lost without them, honestly, because they were my morning show for ever since they got that slot. And it's great. Yeah, it's tough for Sobalski and Slukowski, but as he said, it's a ratings driven industry, and I think there was definitely an argument to be made that they did not do nearly enough to connect with their audience and to build their audience. So I think both of them are going to be both of them are going to end up elsewhere doing something, because I think they're both talented broadcasters. They just, as a morning show, it didn't work. And I think especially after they got rid of Dollywall, I think it was going to be an uphill climb for them to even get any significant ratings pop. They got a little bit with 1040 out, but bringing in a ratings monster, at least in terms of sports radio wise, with Halford and Bruff in the morning was probably a no-brainer decision for Craig McDonald, CMAC, and McEwen, and the 650 brass, because the other thing that got changed just before this was they removed one of the head guys in Toronto out of his position, and he was and gave back some of the control to local. And I think they want to make sure that they are connecting with their listeners and growing a listenership and a fan base. And you're going to do that with Halford and Bruff.
I believe that's Dave Cadeau you're referring to there. That was let go by Rogers. Yes.
Devin, did you have any thoughts on this?
Not on the 650, but 960 also lost their producer, Boomer in the morning. Jason DeForest, he was there forever. I believe it was maybe 10 years he was there with Boomer and the morning show there, which Walker was on as well at one point before Ryan Pinder showed up on the scene. So unfortunate loss to him, and also Peter Klein. I think Peter Klein, he was on the afternoon show a little bit with Steinberg and Will Nault, and I think that he will definitely land on his feet. He's a bit younger, just got married last year, and I think that he is one of the underrated stars was on 960. So hopefully he lands on his feet. I think he will, and I think that DeForest will land on his feet as well. But both are a big loss for 960 if you're a loyal listener.
I'll start 960. I'll start with 960, and then I'll get to 650. Peter Klein was absolutely a huge talent. That is a very sad loss, unfortunately. I think he should have had his own show. That's my personal opinion, which will get me to my second part of that. I certainly felt like he was super talented, very humorous. He did a fantasy sports show for a while, covered MMA, pretty well-rounded sportscaster. I think someone will pick him up for sure. So I think that's a loss. Jason DeForest on the morning show. I didn't hear a lot of him, but I know that he was super talented in what he did. Big loss there. I'm very happy for Karen Sermon to be back on the radio too. I think this is she's someone that's worked very hard. I think her and Scott Rintoul will work very well. And I'm also excited for Halford and Bruff. They're very sad for Seaball and Solkowski. Before we get to Andrew Walker, though, I think the one thing that I think is coming up here is it's kind of weird that we're saying this as a Flames Canucks broadcast and some podcast in some way, that we covered those two primarily. But for the two markets, 650 and 960, I think that 960 has always missed out in having their own 9 to 12 slot. I know that I don't think that from Calgary is a big enough city and a big enough market that they could have always had a 10 to noon type of show there, that they didn't need to bring in Jim Rome or do any other simulcasting. And I think 960 has missed the boat on that. And I think that's where the biggest loss of you losing a Peter Klein. That's where a Peter Klein would have fit very well. He was young enough, I think, for a newer audience to get into. I don't think he would have only talked about Flames. I think he would have touched on some other subjects, and I think that's a huge miss in Calgary part there for sure. And I agree with you, Tyler. I think Andrew Walker is really going to be missed in this market. I liked that he was polarizing. No one would dispute that he wasn't, but he brought a perspective that I think at least people needed to think about. And I say this as a person of a little bit of an outsider coming into a Canucks market. There are some things I noticed that I think when you're growing up in this market, it's too myopic. And I think that what Andrew Walker brought, I think is going to be missed. But I think there's a lot of Vancouver listeners that want that homegrown Vancouver talent that comes in and grows into it. And it's tough to hear an outsider sometimes, but I think those perspectives are definitely needed.
Yeah, one thing he struggled with was, there was this perception that he was a Toronto guy dropped into Vancouver. I mean, yeah, he worked at 590 prior to Vancouver, but he's not a Toronto guy. He's from the prairies. So that was always something that he seemed to be battling. But I always appreciated Walker. He would pour cold water on silly ideas and silly theories and silly opinions coming out of the Vancouver fan base, whereas other people would just keep fanning the flames. Like, for example, people always make a big deal out of the 4 p.m. Saturday start times against the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's a business. It is what it is, guys. Like, just get over it. And Andrew tried to kind of make that point, and that was not well received. People want to crap on the idea, even though no amount of complaining is going to change that decision.
Yeah. Walker on the air was solid. He brought the outsider view. He struggled to connect with the fan base, and there was issues off air that were that he needed to take care of and be able to not be the lightning rod on social media and almost chase away listeners at times. And I think that was part of the issue. I know it was a shtick, but I think he needed to. I think that was part of the issue. So I think he'll definitely find a spot. He's definitely he's a good broadcaster, but there's other issues behind the scenes that would probably didn't help his cause. With going forwards. I'm looking forward to Riccio and Randeep getting a bigger role there on the Drive Home show. I think they deserve it. I think they were one of the few shows on 650 for a while there that was fun and listenable to, without becoming either I like my radio to be fun and not super serious when it needs to be, but you still make fun of yourself when needed. Riccio and Randeep do that, and I think it's a good adding them to Sats with Sat Shaw on that show is gonna be great, and then having Bick have a show with Craig McEwen is going to be great as well. He deserves a bigger role there, and we're going to see more. We're going to see more things change on the Vancouver radio side and media side going forwards. And I do hope that 960 starts to grow and build some local content that doesn't feel like you're being dropped in on. You're being force fed Vancouver radio. Because it's different. It's a completely different market than the Calgary is compared to Vancouver, and they need to find a way to start promoting their local content and local shows. Last night I was having a bit of a nostalgia throwback, just because we had a fun night just chatting hockey. Even just in our group chat and watching the game. And I'm just I want to go to, I miss going to a game, listening to the pregame show on the radio, whether you're driving to the Dome or cabbing to the Dome or whatever. And then you watch the game, and then you listen to the post-game shows in your car or mode of transportation on the way back home or to another bar when you go out and talk more about the hockey. And I really miss that. And I think that's something that they need to find a way to promote, that people listen to the post-game shows when they leave, when it's a home game, or even post-game on the road. Like it's part of the culture of being a hockey fan and being a sports fan in a city, is having those post-game radio shows.
Yeah, I always listen to them. I listen to both. I listen to the one team. I'll listen to Calgary or Vancouver, and then I'll tune in. I'll also listen to what Winnipeg or Edmonton or what the other teams are saying as well, just to get their perspective on why they won or why they lost. I do think that's really important. And I think it feels to me like with Calgary, it's not a small town. There's 1 million people that live in Calgary. And I just feel that they don't need to have a simulcast. That market has the ability to do a 24-hour whatever type of show. I know that for money wise, there's always a decision in doing simulcast. Financially is the reason you mostly do it, but sometimes it's also there's times to develop things as well. And I do think Calgary is missing that market. I think 650 has picked up on that. I'm also happy for Jamie Dodd that he is continuing to produce the Rintoul Karen Sertman show. Big fan of him. Him and Bick were on our show, so happy for all of that. So looking forward to that on Monday as well.
Yeah, just in regards to simulcasting, the Rintoul show on 960, I guess the decision's been made that that's preferable to picking up American programming. And, I would say, well, yeah, at least Rintoul's trying to accommodate the Calgary audience. That's better maybe than picking up American programming, but you're never going to sell that with people as local in Calgary. It's just a decision made to save money.
Yeah,
it's trending in the right direction though, because having Jim Rome on that in that slot before was absolutely terrible. And I know there are Jim Rome fans out there, but God, I could not stand listening to him.
He was fine for a while, but just too much of that.
It's very, very American. He's American, and it didn't resonate with me at all. So anytime that would happen, I would tune out and listen to something else.
Yeah.
It's still somewhat west. It's still west as opposed to simulcasting a 590 show out of Toronto, and we all know how us Westerners, well, most of us Westerners feel about the Toronto media parading and masquerading as national media. So I think it's better than that, but local content is better than anything else. In my opinion,
what radio is supposed to be. It's supposed to be local and connected.
And as Keegan, who's been our chatter today, imagine living in Winnipeg and you lost one at TSN. You don't have Sportsnet. You got CJOB that's covering the Jets. But, imagine being a Winnipeg fan. I mean, they got the sport, that's the 2-hour YouTube show, but I think they're missing their all sports content as well.
Winnipeg's a great sports city. So for them to not be served by a sports radio station is a real void for sure.
Yeah. Anything else on anything that we missed? We did get a comment I did want to get to here before we go. Longtime listener, second time caller, listening in while I'm at work. Just wanted to drop in and say hi. Also, good on you for at least giving Devin Tyler's dad a half an hour reprieve from your curse words.
You're fucking welcome.
We missed you last week there, Devin. We had a very dull show. No, I'm just kidding.
We have a very swearless show.
One of Chris's better shows.
Well, I'm happy to be back, so I will not be missing many. That's for sure.
Okay.
All right. I think our midweek intermission will probably be Thursday after the Canucks and Flames play Wednesday, Good Friday. It'll be a nice holiday transition, and then we can preview where the Canucks go, where the Flames go. That will be where we are at. Maybe, but
the downward spiral.
The downward spiral may continue. How do we follow everyone?
I am Beardy Canucks 03 on Twitter.
I'm on Twitter at TNoble, TNOBLE.
I am Gaudreau09 on Twitter, the best hockey player ever.
I am KVOLE on Twitter, Schneidz, SCHNEIDZ, podcast_hockey, Facebook.com, YouTube.com. Subscribe to all of those. Tell your friends about the most underrated podcast in hockey. The audio is out shortly after. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks everyone for watching, and we will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.